Hi guys, welcome to this video about the Nekro Virus. In this video I will go through how the first round can go with 3 different strategy cards. I will talk about how we can get technology now that we cannot research it by ourselves. And I will also go through this awesome faction's other necromantic abilities. But first, where did the Nekro Virus actually come from? The Nekro Virus was started by an enhancer or scientist called Mordai. He was always experimenting with how he could augment living bodies, and he always used his own when he tried out his latest inventions. His ultimate goal was to create the perfect living being enhanced by a healthful machine, and his latest invention was no exception to this. This time he wanted it to work with his neural network so that he could create an enhanced mind. But guess what? He let the software take over, and ultimately he fully transformed into a mechanical being. And the microfactory that he had turned into would produce and send out thousands of insectile machines that would attach them to any technology inside and start replicating them. And in this way, the Nekro Virus was created. And because we are a virus, we don't have a voice, and that means that we cannot vote during the agenda phase. But that doesn't mean that we're not there. Believe me, we are there, and our agenda is totally different from the other players. This leads us to our first faction ability called Galactic Threat. It says you cannot vote on agendas. Once per agenda phase, after an agenda is revealed, you may predict aloud the outcome of that agenda. If your prediction is correct, gain 1 technology that is owned by a player who voted how you predicted. So let's have a look at an example of how that works. I will not go through the agenda phase in its entirety here, but only talk about how the Nekro Virus can still participate in it, and I will make a video dedicated to the agenda phase at a later point in time. And when it's ready, you can find it in the Learn to Play playlists. So for now, the other 5 players are going to vote on these 2 agendas, so let's have a look at the first one. It's a political censure, it's a law, and it's a elect player. And since we are 6 players in the game, then there are 6 possible outcomes of this agenda. So I think it's better for us to wait trying to predict what the outcome will be. So let's just let the other players vote. And they decide it's the green player who gets to be elected. And now let's reveal the second agenda. Representative government, it's a law. We can vote only for or against. So now we only have 2 possible different outcomes. So now it's much easier for us to predict what it may become. So let's say that we predict it is going to be 4. And if the other players decide to vote 4 in total here, then we may gain 1 technology from one of the players who voted 4. So in this way, we can optimally gain up to 1 technology per agenda phase. But before continuing with the agenda phase, I want to highlight a faction ability called Technological Singularity. And it says, once per combat, after one of your opponent's units is destroyed, you may gain 1 technology owned by that player. And what is very convenient for us is that we don't have to comply with any prerequisites when gaining technology in this way. We can simply take whatever technology from that player that we want, but just 1 of course. This faction ability is our primary source to gaining new technology, and I would say that it is hard to play the Nekro Virus effectively without attacking other players and replicating whatever technology they have researched. So to play these guys, we must be prepared to negotiate, bribe, or simply just attack to score certain public and secret objectives. And if we get a technology on top of that, that is just great. So let's say that the outcome of an agenda will affect us in a negative way, just like this wormhole research here. If it goes 4, each player who has 1 or more ships in a system that contains a wormhole may research 1 technology, then destroy all ships in systems that contain an alpha or beta wormhole. So even though we would get 3 command tokens instead of a technology, if it goes 4, we would also lose the entire fleet in this alpha wormhole. So we are not interested in this agenda is voted for. So we have a look around and can see that the Federation of Sol has enough influence to determine the outcome of this agenda, and he actually wants to vote for because he won't lose any units by doing so. So we will have a small chat with him, and we could for instance first offer him 3 trade goods to vote against, because it will cost him a command token if the agenda is voted against. So we have made up for his loss there, but he's still not convinced. Then we can point at this fleet here and say we will attack you in here, and then you will probably lose your carrier and a destroyer. And when we destroy one of those units, then we will actually put our assimilator token on your advanced carrier too, so we have that technology as well. And this is usually enough to convince them that the first offer was the best one with the 3 trade goods. And in this way we have affected the outcome of this agenda. Even though we cannot vote during the agenda phase, we are still affected by most laws and directives that are put into play. And we can even get to be the elected player for the laws that require a player to be elected. And we can also play rider action cards, just like all the other players can do. There are several types of riders, but for brevity I will just use the Imperial rider as an example. So let's say that we use our Galactic Threat faction ability to predict the outcome of this directive to be 4. Then afterwards we can play the Imperial rider on against. And in this way we will either gain a technology owned by one of the players who voted for, or if the other players decide to vote against, then we will get a victory point. So unless all the other players decide to abstain from voting, we will gain something good from the agenda phase. This leads us to our third faction ability called Propagation. You cannot research technology. When you would research the technology, gain 3 command tokens instead. And of course this is just absolutely fine, because we have other ways of gaining technology. But first a little tip. Let's say that we are running low on command tokens and some other player has already picked the leadership card before we could take it. Then we can take the technology card as an alternative and then gain either 3 or 6 command tokens when we play that card. But now let's have a look at our starting units. We have 1 dreadnought, 1 carrier, 1 cruiser, 2 fighters and 2 infantry. And with these starting units we can only gain control of 2 planets in 1 system or 1 planet in 2 systems. And for most factions a good first round includes gaining control of all planets in at least 2 systems, so that we can spend the resources and influence starting already from round 2. But with this starting fleet we may have to cope with less, and that is okay, as we don't need to spend as much resources on researching technology as most of the other factions must do. Instead we will build more fleets so we can fly out and replicate technology from the other players and stay as powerful as them. And this brings us to our first round strategy demonstration with the trade strategy card. So as our very first action, we will activate out here with our carrier, 2 infantry and 2 fighters, and we will explore the planets. And then as our second action, we can play our trade strategy card, and we will then gain 3 commodities and 3 trade goods. And we can of course always hear the Green and the Federation of Sol, and hear if any of them wants to trade with us. And in case one or both of them wants to do that, then we can replenish their commodities. And then we want to hear them if they want to send a trade ship to us, so that we can actually convert our commodities into trade goods. And we can also, as a last thing, try carefully and ask if it's okay if we actually shoot down their trade ship afterwards. And we will of course compensate their loss with a few trade goods. Then as our third action, we can activate Evera out here and fly our cruiser out there. Then it is in the right position in case the Federation of Sol want to take this system from us at some point, because then we can hopefully shoot down one of his ships and get a technology that way. But mostly we are waiting for the warfare player to play his card so we can build some more units in our home system. But unfortunately we don't have any luck with that, because the warfare player is still waiting, so we can't do much more and decide to pass for the round. And then immediately after it gets to be the warfare player, and then he actually plays his strategy card. So we do the secondary of that and spend 4 resources on our home planet plus 1 trade good and build a cruiser, destroyer and 4 infantry. And then we have these units ready to fly out in the beginning of round 2. And in this way we have gained control of these 2 planets, and we have set up to both getting more technology here, but also get 1 more planet with our dreadnought in round 2. If we get stalled out of warfare, just like we did in this example, then it's not the end of the world, because we don't need as many resources as the other players do to research technology. So we can easily catch up on that in the next round. And one final tip is to make sure to always produce at least 2 infantry or mech every time we produce units in our home system, because they will become very handy to have whenever we get to build our flagship later in the game. And I will come back to the flagship near the end of this video. But first, let's have a look at our starting technologies and how we can gain even more technology, since we cannot research it ourselves. We start with Daxiv animators. After we win a ground combat, we may place one infantry from our reinforcements on that planet, but we also gain one technology from the player we won against because we have destroyed at least one of his units. And with this technology, we basically get to reproduce one of our insectile machines after each ground combat we win. This may not be one of the best technologies to start with, but it fits with the faction lore. Since we cannot research technology ourselves, we are highly dependent on the other players and what technology they decide to research. I have tried games where the other players didn't research any technology at all, simply to prevent the Nekro player from gaining any. And I have also tried games where the other players researched technology, like the Nekro player was not even in the game. Even faction technologies were researched. And believe me, technology makes a huge difference for the Nekro player, because without it, they are simply reduced to a baseline faction without any special abilities, and they cannot even vote for the outcome of an agenda. So let's hope that the other players will research technology so that we get to replicate it. And the best way to do this early game is to have a few fleets near the other players so that we can snipe away any weak fleets and replicate that technology. We are still not in control with which technologies the other players decide to research, so we cannot plan ahead. But of course we look at what they actually research so we know which technologies are available for us. We can also try to convince another player to research a specific technology that both he and we need, but then he knows he will be attacked by us. So at the end of this video, I will tell you how we can use this technological Singularity faction ability so we don't turn the entire table against us. Before I demonstrate how the first round can go with both the leadership and the technology strategy cards, I will quickly go through our Promissory Note and our faction technology placeholders. Our Promissory Note is an antivirus, so the holder of this card cannot have any technologies replicated by the Nekro player. So as a rule of thumb, we don't give this to anyone. It will only hurt us. The only example I could think of is if we already have the support for the throne from another player, then we could consider giving our antivirus to that player, but since we won't attack him anyways, it doesn't really make any sense. So let's just flip this card and forget that we have it. Since there are no duplicate cards of each faction's faction technologies, we have gotten these X and Y assimilator tokens instead, and we can simply put these on the faction technologies that we have replicated from the other players. But this also limits us to only having 2 faction technologies like all the other players have, but we can still replicate a third one, but then we need to move either our X or Y assimilator token to that technology and losing the one we had. Besides the trade strategy card, the leadership card is also attractive for us because we want to do all these small attacks on the other players' fleets, and this of course costs more command tokens. So luckily for us, we can get these with both the leadership and the technology strategy cards. So if no one has taken the technology card, we can consider taking it, because then we will gain the command tokens, but we will also nudge the other players into researching more technology, which we of course want them to do. But before we pick the technology card over the leadership card, we will quickly ask the players picking strategy cards after us and hear if they are interested in the technology card, because then we can safely take leadership, gain command tokens from that card, but also from the technology card, and then they will do the nudging of researching more technology for us. So let's have a look at how the first round can go with both the leadership and the technology cards. And I will demonstrate both of these cards now, because they will have a very similar action sequence. So as our first action, we can move out here and gain control of these 2 planets with 2 infantry and 2 fighters, and we will explore the planets. Then as our second action, we can play our strategy card, and we will gain 3 command tokens for that. And now let's have a look at our agent. It says, during the action phase, you may exhaust this card to choose a player. That player may discard 1 action card or spend 1 command token from their command sheet to gain 2 trade goods. So we want to do that. So we put 1 command token back, and then we will gain these 2 trade goods here. Then as our third action, we can move our cruiser out here to Evera. So in case the Federation of Sol want to take this system away from us, we can hopefully shoot down one of his ships and gain a technology that way. And now we are lucky that the Warfare player decides to play his strategy card, so we opt in on doing the secondary of that. So we pay a token from our strategy pool to produce some units in our home system. And we want to use 5 resources to do so. So we exhaust our home planet and pay 1 trade good. And with that, we build 4 infantry, 1 destroyer and 1 cruiser. Then as our 4th action, we can activate out here on perimeter and move 1 dreadnought and 1 infantry out there. And then it gets to be the Federation of Sol, and they decide to fly out here and gain control of these 2 planets, like so. And we can see they have the neural motivator, and that's a technology that we really want. So we also activate the same system when it gets to be us. And then we move out here with our cruiser and destroyer, and hopefully with anti-fighter barrage and in the regular combat, we can shoot down one of his 3 ships here, and then we can replicate the neural motivator technology from him. So with these cards, we have gained control of 2 systems, we have built some units in our home system, we have gained the technology from the Federation of Sol, and we also have a ship that can potentially give us 1 more technology later in the game. And with either of these strategy cards, we have gained control of a single system, we have built an extra fleet to replicate technologies from the other players, and we have gained 3 extra command tokens. Next I will cover our commander and our hero, and then I will demonstrate how the first round can go with the politics strategy card. We unlock our commander by having 3 technologies, but note that our placeholder faction technologies, the Valify, Assimilator X and Y, must have each of their respective tokens on another player's faction technology to count. But when we do unlock our commander, then we will get 1 action card every time we gain a technology, and this works great in combination with our agent, and especially if we have the neural motivator as well, because then we will have the extra action cards to spare whenever we flip the agent, and we can still build a pretty good hand with action cards. And now let's have a look at our hero, and we of course unlock it by scoring 3 objectives. It says, action, choose a planet that has a technology specialty in a system that contains your units, destroy any other player's units on the planet, gain trade goods equal to that planet's combined resource and influence values, and gain 1 technology that matches the specialty of that planet, then purchase this card. So let's have a quick look around and see what we have available. We got a red technology specialty planet here, so we could do it here. And there's a blue one and a yellow one out here, but we don't have any units, so we cannot play it there. But there's also a red technology specialty here, and there is a pretty interesting technology in the warfare tech tree, and that is the assault cannon. It says at the start of a space combat in a system that contains 3 or more of your non-fighter ships, your opponent must destroy 1 of his non-fighter ships. And there's a good synergy here with our technological singularity, because whenever we destroy 1 of our opponent's units, we gain 1 technology. And that applies here both when we attack and defend systems. So let's play our hero on Mir, and then we get rid of these 4 strong Spec Ops infantry, and then we can get the assault cannon. And if the Sol player decides to retaliate our attack here, then we have 3 non-fighter ships in this system, and then he will automatically give us 1 more technology even before the space combat begins. But we also have a blue tech skip planet available in our slice, and in a real game we would have gained control of this system when we have unlocked our hero. So an alternative to the assault cannon could of course be the light wave deflector. It says your ships can move through systems that contain other player ships, and this will give us a lot of flexibility in the end game, because all of a sudden we can reach system tiles that can either score us victory points or prevent other players from scoring victory points, because the other player's ships are no longer in the way. Here I mentioned the 2 top tier technologies in the red and the blue technology trees, but of course we can gain any technology that we want. So of course we should always pick the technology we think will help us the most. And now let's have a look at how the first round can go with the politics strategy card. And with the politics strategy card, our first action will be the same as with the other cards. We activate out here, move our carrier, 2 infantry and 2 fighters out there and explore the planets. Then as our second action, we play the politics card. So first we get to choose who becomes speaker, and we take it for ourselves. So we can choose strategy card as the first one in the next round. Then we get to draw 2 action cards, like so. And we also get to look at the 2 top agendas in the agenda deck.
but I don't want to do that now. But let's have a look at our action cards. First we got Infiltrate. When you gain control of a planet, replace each PDS and space dock that is on that planet with a matching unit from your reinforcements. Okay, so that's not very important right now. And this one, Diplomatic Pressure. When an agenda is revealed, choose another player. That player must give you one promissory note from their hand. Also not very important. So I want to discard one of these with using our agent. And as you may remember, if we discard an action card or spend a command token, we can gain 2 trade goods. So let's just get rid of this Infiltrate and get 2 trade goods and exhaust our agent. Then as our third action, we can activate out here on Evera. So we have the cruiser out there to hopefully gain a technology. Then the green player plays the Warfare Strategy card, and we do the secondary of that. So we spend 5 resources, like so, to build these 4 units here. And then we have 1 tactical action left, and then we can either fly out here to perimeter with our Dreadnought and 1 infantry and get that planet, or we can attack the Sol player here and hopefully replicate the neural motivator. So I think we should do that. So we activate the same system here and fly out there with a cruiser and a destroyer, and hopefully we can shoot down this single carrier and replicate the neural motivator. So with this card we have gained control of these 2 planets here. We've built some more units, we've gotten some action cards and trade goods by using our agent, and we have replicated a technology from the Sol player.
Next I will talk about our mechs and our flagship and how awesome it is to protect our home system.
So let's have a look at our mechs here. It says, during combat against an opponent who has an X or Y token on one more of their technologies, apply +2 to the result of each of this unit's combat rolls. And in this example here, we got our X assimilator token on the Sol player's advanced carrier 2. And that means that each of our mechs here will hit on a 4 when they participate in a ground combat against the Sol player's infantry here, which is pretty powerful. But it's also hard to plan after, so it's only something I would take advantage of if the situation occurs.
So when we hopefully are about to win the game and the other players start to look at how they can take our home system away from us so that we cannot score any more public objectives, then we have already built our flagship and a bunch of ground forces in our home system. Because what our flagship can do is to let all these ground forces participate in space combat along with our flagship. So even though it rolls 2 dice but only hits on a 9, then all these ground forces will bring plenty of firepower and hit points to win most of the space combats. So if we build our flagship and a bunch of ground forces in our home system, then it will be nearly impossible for the other players to take it away from us.
Technology is just as important to us than it is to the rest of the players. So how do we use our technological singularity faction ability without turning the table against us? Well, first of all, talk to the other player involved. Let them know that we only attack so we can replicate a technology from them, and that we will pay a few trade goods to compensate for their loss. Attacking the other players is necessary for us to stay important and strong in the game, so we need to tell them that we just play our faction, and we can also try to downplay the severity of our attacks. And this is done best by talking with the other player prior to any attack, and let them know that this is not because we see them as a threat or that we are going to score any victory points by doing so. And hopefully in this way we can gain their trust a little bit, because they will know ahead of time what is going to happen. And if we don't do this and just attack out of the blue, we will be considered a loose cannon that cannot be trusted, making it both harder and more expensive for us to gain more technology. So we want to make sure we always have some trade goods on our sheet we can use to compensate for their lost ships.
And with that said, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to my channel. It will help me a lot. So thank you again if you do, and I will see you in the next one.